Good evening, everyone. For me, anyway, it's 8 p.m. here in Cyprus. Today, we'll be having another heart-to-heart, this time with Ethan Freckleton, and we're gonna have another one on co-writing. I know we've discussed this before. I talked about this with Sheena Mary, who I co-write with, and one of the aspects that came up for us is, of course, that communication is key. You need a certain level of flexibility. You need to allow for a certain kind of fluidity. It's about reflecting on the process, making sure that whatever process you have in place still works for everybody involved. If you need to adapt, do adapt. I've also talked with the Martones, and one of the things they came up with, which I found very interesting, is first of all, they said, when you work together with somebody, it's absolutely necessary that you believe in the other's abilities, but also that you respect the other's process. If you can't do that, it's going to be really difficult to have a sustainable co-writership. So today I'm talking with Ethan about the do's and don'ts. So let's see what Ethan has to add to this. And I'm also hoping that he can maybe give us some concrete examples and advice. Because these, of course, are communication, believing in the other, respecting their process, allowing for flexibility and fluidity. That's all rather vague. So I'm hoping maybe today we can discuss about some actual concrete tools or how would I say that, tactics to do this. So I see in my corner, I see Ethan coming on and off. So I'm going to invite him in now and hopefully that works in one go. Let me see. Oh, there goes my camera. Add. This is always the moment of truth. Dun, dun, dun. Connecting.
Hello.
Hello, you're here. Hello.
Hi. It's good to see you, Marielle.
Yeah, good to see you as well. Good morning to you.
Yeah.
It's quite early
Um,
for you, isn't it?
yeah, it's definitely morning. Um, Great setup.
Did you put another book on that?
I did. I added a second book I've got below my phone, Creating Character Arcs by K.M. Wieland, and Now Write, Science Fiction, Fantasy, and Horror. Several exercises for writers of speculative fiction.
Excellent. I got rid of one book. My stack was too high.
Oh no, which one
Um,
had to go?
Thug. The Hate You Give.
Oh, yeah, we're not going to do the hate. Yeah.
No, no, we're gonna do the love, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, that had to go, unfortunately. But yeah, I have my yoga blogs. I have an interesting setup. We were just talking before we got on about how professional our setup is, because
Hmm.
I was playing with my yoga blogs, and I have a combination of books, yoga blogs, and Oracle decks to set it all up. So yeah. Um, hey, welcome.
Thank you.
I know you've done a lot of co-writing in different genres
Hmm. Yeah, and
with different
mediums.
people.
Yeah.
And mediums, yeah. So I'm really curious to hear what you have to add uh, uh, to all this, because the people I've interviewed thus far have only co-written
Hmm.
with one other person.
Yeah. Well, congratulations. And you're still
Well, it's
talking.
good if this, yeah. So it's good, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So, hey, I have a
Well, one of them
question.
was a married couple, so
Yeah, Daniel and
I'm
Laura.
glad they figured that. Yeah, Daniel or yes, I'm glad they figured that out.
Yeah. I have a question for you, just so I can get a sense. Because we're going to be talking about tips and that sort of thing, and I feel like advice is only as good as it is aligned to why you're doing what you're doing. And so for you, I'm curious, why co-writing? Why are you
Well, I
interested
did
in
the
this?
For me, what I did the co-writing, where we started was the conversation started actually when we were both. So I co-wrote with Sheena Mary
Mm,
under a pen name Heather MacLeay,
mm,
and we were both kind of in a slump. Um, I was struggling really to get the first draft down, and she was struggling really um, to get what she had
mm,
um, together, to find a structure in what she had.
Mm.
So we were like, oh, this is interesting because we have different struggles.
Mm.
You know, it's not,
Mm-hmm.
I think for the longest time, I was a very lonely writer. I didn't know anybody else. So
Mm-hmm.
you also kind of, when you're in that phase, when you're afraid to tell people that you're writing because you're afraid they're going to make fun of you or tell you,
Mm-hmm.
to get serious about life.
Mm.
Um, so I wasn't connecting with too many authors yet when I met her for the first time. So I always kind of assumed that writers have quite similar struggles.
Mm.
So it's been an interesting ride to see that for me as well, because I'm also an editor, to
Mm-hmm.
see that I know so many writers who love the first draft and they really hate the editing and the revising and like the crossing of the T's and the dotting of the I's, which is the part I absolutely love. For
Mm.
me, the first draft is very difficult. Like I'm a really good plotter,
Mm-hmm.
so I can do an outline. That's very easy for me. I
Uh,
can put all the layers in,
mm.
but then just sitting there and then writing it, that is like an obstacle.
Mm.
So for Sheena Mary, her issue was it's very easy for her to do a first draft. If you give her a writing prompt, something will come out.
Mm.
But for her, it was very difficult to then string these together into a coherent story.
Mm.
So we were like, okay, so there was a genre that we both wanted to try the writing, which was romance,
Mm.
LGBT romance.
Mm.
We both wanted to try writing that. So we were like, okay, so I'm a plotter. She's a pantser. So I'm a plotter. She's really good at first drafting. I love the editing, the revising.
Mm.
So how about I see if I can create a plot. You look at that, and if you can work with that, you write the first draft.
Mm.
And how she does it is she doesn't look too far ahead. She just, looks at the scene. So in
Mm-hmm.
Scrivener, I just put like, I put all the chapters.
Yeah.
And at the top, I just write the little plot. So she doesn't even know what's happening next. She just writes.
Yeah.
And then I get it back and I string it all together and I sort of, make sure that everything connects. So that is how we started co-writing because we realized that we both had something that we could do, but it would take us a long time.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, first drafting takes a long time. For her, like turning it into an actual
Right.
structure, that takes a long, long time. So that's how we decided, well, if your weakness is my strength and the other way around, let's see if we can sort of like,
Yeah.
match that.
Yeah.
That's how we started doing that.
And that's working for you, kind of according to theory. Were there any kind of surprises in terms of like things that were more
Well,
difficult or easier than you thought?
I think the biggest surprise was that we assumed that we would test the structure, like
Mm.
test the process, and
Mm.
then, after the first book, we would have to sit with the process and probably tweak it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think the biggest surprise was that we were both like, I don't think we need to tweak this. I think it works. So I think
Mm.
for me the biggest surprise was that I do see some things that could be improved to make us go faster.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of what we wanted to try, because the first idea, because we write trilogies in a world, and their all trilogies are about a pairing. So we decided we first do one trilogy, and then for the second trilogy, we're gonna turn the whole thing around. So she's
Mm.
gonna try and do the plot, and I'll
Mm-hmm.
try the first draft, and then at one point we were like, would that be stupid? Would that be a waste of time? Because this apparently, like the bigger structure that we have in place, it seems to work really well. So do
Mm.
we actually need to change it, or should we just? Because it's all about, it's all about iteration, optimizing.
Yeah,
But maybe it's possible to get it right from the start.
I think so.
And then you just need to tweak it a little bit.
I think there's one of the things that I'm very aware of, both from co-writing and from having been a project manager in the software world, is there's that idea of good enough, right? Like you've got your initial objectives,
Hmm.
and if things are working, you can actually slow things down and throw wrenches into the process by trying to change it when it's already a moving like piece of work. And so having that trust to just see it through and then, in a new project, try out some new things because you're also playing and learning and growing, right? With each thing.
Yeah.
That's part of the
Hmm.
excitement for me, at least, right? Is not doing the same thing every time. And for me, that's one of the allures of co writing personally, is that it's different every time. I'm working with different people, it's different dynamics. I'm getting out of my own head, right? And
Yeah.
right, and that's because I hit that point like with music and songwriting, and other creative endeavors. Just I was getting bored of myself a little bit,
Hmm.
and so it was really fun to get out of my own head and be able to make other people's ideas better, or to see new possibilities when people are adding to mine. And yeah, and
So is that where you started the co-writing? Sorry, is that where you started, like in the music business?
yeah,
Is that where you
I
first
started in
attempted it?
music. So I was kind of stumbling around and trying to figure out my way with music for about 5 to 7 years, doing my own thing. My dad played bass and was in bands all the time. And I figured, hey, I just figure it out. I'll read some books, right? And kind of figure out songwriting and do the thing. It's good enough to have a band and be out there and playing songs. And um, I ended up a little bit of a transition, and I saw this conference, professional conference, was happening in a place that I'd always wanted to go in Kauai. So I went to this music industry conference kind of geared at performing artists and songwriters. And it just like
Hmm.
opened my eyes to this whole other world of like, wait, here's how people actually think about the creative aspects and think about the business. And I ended up getting plugged into the Nashville Songwriters Association, which has chapters all over the world, regional chapters, and also conferences and inexpensive resources. They're not for profit. And what I realized, came to learn, was that for the great majority of hits and songs that are making money in contemporary music in different genres, there's more than one writer. It's all team based work. Um, so that kind of was got me into the door of that world. And I went through a lot of trying out co-writes and things that worked and were fun and things that didn't work and weren't fun. A lot of trial and error. And I definitely learned my preferences around co-writing. Um, and we can get into that for sure. I think there's like some general tips, and then there's just insights for me, the things that work for me.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, which might very well resonate
Yeah,
with
and
us as well.
I got into writing books around 2016, 2017. And, I started by trying to figure out the craft for myself. So I was writing by myself. But the current project I'm working on that's being published is a co-write, and it only exists because somebody was interested in this offshoot idea I had. I was kind of joking about, and somebody I met, and I posted this fake blurb to the 20 books conference page after we went to this conference in 2017, kind of joking. And JR from Terra is my co-writer for the Starship
Hmm.
Ass series, and she's like, this needs to be a real thing. I'm like, oh man, I've got like this queue of ideas, but also I know I like co-writing, so maybe we should talk about it and explore that. Um, so we're kind of in the finishing phases of that, where we've got our prequel, book one, book two. We're in the middle of book three right now, and that will kind of complete the core project, and we'll see based on reader response if we keep going. I've also got another collaboration in the works, and it's totally different. It's kind of more in that game lit realm. I don't know if you've heard of game lit or lit RPG.
Yeah, yeah, Lit RPG, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
and
It's
for
it's a big
me,
thing right now.
yeah, and I don't have to write it, but I always thought if I do, there's just so much world building and like game system stuff, and I'm really into the characters. I'm all about characterization and having fun with that, and I don't get as much energy and joy out of creating those things, and it's a lot of work. So I found somebody from my own social circles who, kind of a hobbyist around writing, but really they're just really in and understand how these things work, and they have their own world that they've been developing for like 10 years. So all this world
Oh,
building.
that's amazing.
And so we're able to get together for several months and kind of flesh this whole world out, as well as a game system to kind of support telling a story on top of it. And so that's how we're collaborating. And then we go over, kind of what each story would be about and bounce ideas, but I'll be doing the writing for it. But he's providing all this research, right? And kind of underlying how things work. And so that's a really nice pairing too. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a very unique kind of collaboration almost. Is
Yeah.
that's almost as if usually you write and then when you do your research, like well, we used to go to the library, I think these days it's mostly Google,
Mm.
um, unless you do like actual archival research. But it's so handy if you have like your library just like, at the other end of your phone.
Yeah.
Just go like, I just wrote this. How do you feel about this? Is this in line with is this possible in our world? So that's very useful.
Yeah. And so I'm a parent. I've got two kids and I'm also doing two businesses at once. And so for me, time is really my constrained resource in all of this.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
there's always money in those things too, but so when I'm looking to collaborate, I'm looking for situations that are going to put me ahead of that curve or allow me to take on projects that I wouldn't otherwise be able to do because of time.
That's a good way of saying that. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, I mean,
Well, that's
yeah, I think about those just in terms of reasons to co-write that are personal to me. I think for each person, there's different reasons, right? And maybe there's reasons not to. Yeah.
I think that like I've just been you mentioned 20 books to 50K the
Mm.
conference. Is that the Vegas one?
Hmm. Yeah, I
Yes,
went to the
and so
first one and
yeah, so
yeah.
yes, I was just July. There was the 20 books Edinburgh. I was there.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was really good. But yeah, most of the I saw a lot of people like connecting and discussing, oh, we should do this together.
Hmm.
And I think for a lot of people, it is the time
Yeah.
because we all know, like, the more books you put out there, that's the easier it is to be successful or to get known. Like the
Hmm.
best marketing is just writing the next book.
Yeah.
So for me, when I did the romance, that was definitely something. We were like, can we speed up our process because we are both working. This is one of the reasons we have the penning is that we both write completely different things,
Hmm.
and those projects just take up so much more time because of all the research involved.
Hmm.
So we wanted to be like we've been writing for it for. I mean, I've been writing for almost 2 decades. We want to show that to like we want to like demonstrate that we're actually doing this,
Yeah.
not just talk about it.
Yeah.
So can we try this? But I just recently, and I think so. That's my point. Is like it also depends on the project. I just recently started a co-writing project with a fellow writing coach,
Mm.
and we are writing about imposter syndrome.
Mm. Cool.
And that is for me, we have a sense of like we could probably put this book out quite quickly if we want to.
Mm.
But during the initial stages of sort of like, figuring out how we're gonna do it, what is my strength, what is his strength, um, I think we both came to an understanding that we're just gonna like we just need to write this.
Mm.
So there is no, we need to write it this year because it's this. I don't have any ideas about what it will
Mm.
do for us, but we just have to say this and we
Mm.
agree on, because we've had discussions about this often. So we are quite on the same page.
Hmm.
Um, which is sometimes a bit unorthodox if you look at what other people are saying in the. So it's also a bit daring to write. So it's nice to write it with
Yeah.
somebody
Mm.
else.
Hmm.
So it's a different. That for me was not about the time. It was just like I need to do this with this person that I connect with so well on this particular topic.
Right.
So I
And
think it also maybe depends on the kind of project.
yeah, like why and what the goals are, and if it's like aligned to something deeper, right? It sounds like there's some
Yeah.
deeper meaning for both of you and it's going to help you understand the topic better, and you're probably going to put out
Yes.
something that's a great resource, because imposter syndrome is something that comes up for everybody. And that's, I have a
Yeah.
podcast, and that's part of why I'm doing it, is to show that people at all stages of their career suffer from fear and doubt, imposter syndrome, you know.
Yeah.
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 And
Well, that's
that,
why I love the title so much,
mm,
the fearlessness about it. I love it.
yeah, thank
Yeah.
you. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I know you wanted to get into tips and that kind of thing, or uh, I, you know, one of the biggest things I've found is that, like, well, when you're co-writing a song, like, there are advantages and
Mm-hmm.
disadvantages to every medium, and for people who may jump in, like, I write songs and I write books. Um, and so there's a lot of overlap in terms of what, like, in terms of intangibles and chemistry and project management and those kind of things that are similar. And there's also things that are different about books. Like, book is a bigger commitment, right? In terms of time frame, how long it takes to write. Um, in many ways, the expense piece of it is similar if you're planning to actually produce a song. And so it kind of comes out the same. Um, but like, there's these baseline things, which is, can you and the other person achieve a rapport? Can you be vulnerable with each other? Are you able to, like, share your real stuff, your inner process, be willing to go places that are real? Um, and and that's a personal thing. It may not even be about the other person. It's like, do I feel like I can open up with this person? And do I feel like I'm getting a real connection with this other person? It's like the same as dating, right? In
Mm-hmm.
in
Yeah.
some
Yeah.
sense. And I just lost my notes, but um, so that's an important factor. And there is an element of, two people who write together will have different tools, or there may be overlap in terms of what skill sets are.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, let's talk about failures for a minute, like failures. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so a couple years ago, I went into a studio to record a song, but also to co-write a song in, like, one day, and then turn it around and record it the next day.
Mm-hmm.
And we kind of stalled out a little bit. We got an interesting concept and lyric, but when it came to the time to execute and make the thing, we found that we were strong in the same areas, and what we had little pieces that were missing that we couldn't,
Yeah.
in a time efficient manner, turn around. Like, we were an incomplete team as far as it went. And so, you know, there's a lesson learned. And part of that, the other side of it is to be willing to fail, and not pin, like, for me personally, I've been through this journey enough. I get really high, like, ooh, I'm going to be writing with so and so person. I'm doing this thing, and it's going to be great, and greatest thing ever. It's an opportunity I've been waiting for. And no, really, it's just like, you're creating a product. It, by itself, it may or may not ever have value, but it's another thing you're adding to your portfolio, intellectual property you can exploit, and it's helping you get better through the practice of doing it, regardless of what the outcome is, right? And you're building a relationship with the person where you can make more stuff in the future, and you open your networks up to each other. So it's always going to be a success in one regard. In terms of experience, you're
Yeah.
developing a relationship, unless you just really don't work well together, and that's good to know too.
Yeah.
Um, so those are,
There's also that's the thing, yeah, the failure, like that's why you did this, like when you said failures, because
yeah,
it's in the end, it's like it's learning moments, right?
yeah, and this is
If
where,
you yeah, you can
yeah,
learn from it.
yeah, and this is where this, I feel, the one place where the psychology of writing books and stories is a little different, maybe, is around this time thing. And so a hit songwriter, like, I met and talked to, and in some cases collaborated with these hit songwriters, but these are people who their success rate in terms of either getting a song cut or having a hit song is a fraction of 1% to 1% for all the work they do. And so there becomes, so you're doing every day, you're writing, you're collaborating, you're writing songs, you're building a library of stuff. But then there's this discernment piece around where am I going to invest in terms of my other resources, time, energy, cash to produce something, to get it to the next step, that kind of thing. And even then, it's not likely going to in itself have a result. It's more the body of work over time and the relationships that leads to success. And books, a little different. You're talking about a big time commitment. I've been working with JR on this book series. We really started writing a year ago. So we kind of were in different spaces where for 9 months our schedules weren't aligned, but we were chatting and doing kind of a little bit of world building and figuring out who our characters are. And then we're writing, and we'll be done in another month. So basically, it's 13 months of writing off and on, plus 9 months of lead time. It's kind of 2 years in my life. And who knows what the outcome's going to be, how the sales are going to be, what the long-term curve and all that, right?
Yeah, you just don't know that, yeah.
Yeah, and so if I'm saying, hey, I have to make a career out of this collaboration, right, then that's a lot of pressure to put on it on the one hand,
Yeah.
right?
I see a
But
lot of people doing that.
yeah, and I think I'm more comfortable to say, do we have a baseline level of craft? Are we able to work together? Are we able to show up in our seats when we say we're going to, right? Um, do we understand the business of what we're doing? Does the overhead for what resources we're putting into it make sense? Like, are we aligned? Are we sharing
Yeah.
the burden and the risk, right? Um, and really, at the end of the day, the best I can say is we are creating intellectual property, and it will have a certain amount of value once there's enough products in the queue, right?
Yeah, that's the idea, yeah.
Yeah, and then move on. And so it's not something you can speed through. And I know that's something a lot of people approach differently. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's all about time.
Yeah.
Exactly. No, but it's interesting. It's interesting what you said because, like over the past 2 years or so, I've had multiple people approach me for collaborations,
Mm.
and I've come to realize what my red flags should be
Yeah,
because I've
that's.
said yes. I said yes to a few of them, and
Mhm.
what I've been realizing, honestly, that's something I've been realizing over the past few months only. That was like my one of my biggest epiphany is that all the projects that I've initially said yes to,
Mm.
but they came from people who talk not about I have to write this and I think we could really do this well together. We just have to put this story out. This is something, even with the romance, that's kind of started as a joke.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also, we're both very much concerned with representation, changing the canon, adding different stories, own
Mm.
voices, stuff like that.
Mm.
So it was also about that. It was also about showing that we can write stories differently, also in our very specific genre. There are particular tropes that we wanted to, well, we break quite a few rules. So
Mm.
it was also a test, and that was the
Yeah.
fun part. So even though it started as a joke, we're quite serious about it. And with the imposter syndrome book, like we sort of came together and we were like, we need to write about this.
Mm-hmm.
But the other project, it was the focus was on, I have this idea, together we can write it fast, and I think it will make us a lot of money.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
So for me, and now I realize that the red flag is if somebody comes to me, wants to collaborate with me, and starts promising me rainbows and pots of gold.
Yeah.
I'm like, then it's because
Yeah.
it's not about it's not about the story that they have to tell, but it's they have a thing, they
Yeah.
have an idea that they think. will be a money maker, and
Yeah.
together we can just do it faster.
Yeah. Almost
And
viewing
that's
you,
just
does
not,
it feel like you're a widget at that point versus maybe having some deeper investment? I don't
yeah,
know.
it's more like they know I write.
Yeah. It's
So
interesting. It's reminding me I had an opportunity come along like that a while ago, and I haven't moved forward with it because it wasn't meeting my internal needs. Like in some way, I know, we're all trying to make a living and invest our time in ways that balance what we need inside and our creative fulfillment and balance being able to pay the bills and live the lifestyle we want. But for me, it was more like, here's a franchise, here's an idea, and you'll even get a bigger split of the money, but you're going to write this in isolation. Here's the other resources. Go to town. And that doesn't fulfill me. I like to have dialogue and kick ideas
mhm,
around. And so, since it didn't have that element to it, it kind of felt impersonal. And for me, that's
yeah.
just, it doesn't work for me. I mean, if I was making choices in my life as an adult around what's going to make me the most money, I would be doing different things.
Yeah, but that's not what it's about. I mean,
Yeah, exactly.
not for me anyway.
Yeah,
So
and so
yeah,
as long as I'm making sure my needs are taken care of, then there's a balance there of like how much money do I need and what are these other things worth in terms of
yeah.
fulfillment and joy. Um, yeah.
Well, this is the thing. Like the one, like I have so many things that I brought with me back from 20 Books Edinburgh, and I've put them all like on my vision board.
Mm,
And like what I hear you say, like Martha Carr said, when she's struggling whether or not to take something on, she asks herself, or when she's doing something, she asks herself, "Am I having any fun?"
yeah.
Which is, and with like you just said, like we already have such limited time.
Mm-hmm.
So can we then, at least use that time that we do have to do something that we like? And the same, like, and of course, like the why question that has been around, that's been in my head ever since I started listening to the self-publishing podcast,
Mm.
the previous Smarter Arty guys.
Yeah, Sean,
But that
Sean and
again,
Dave,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, and then Johnny, and that came up as well again during the conference. And for me, my wife, from the start of from the first time I started listening to them and started writing it down, it's always been like I wanted to produce a body of work that I can be proud of.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember one time that I pitched an idea to somebody who was a really fast first drafter as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought, well, we can do the same thing. You first draft. Um, but for me, the pitch had certain stakes. Like it was going to be a story that would tell, like that would build a world the way I wanted it to be. Like so, it was very. It was a dystopian world, but with certain utopian aspects.
Mm-hmm.
So everything that was aligned with what I wanted to sell and like the legacy I want to leave in this world,
Mm.
this person was like, yeah, we can do this, but I'm gonna like I cannot work with this, I cannot work with this, I cannot work. So all the things that were actually deal breakers for me
Mm.
got, and I was like, well, then I cannot do it because I can still
Mm-hmm.
do it,
Yeah,
but it was no longer the story that I needed to tell.
right.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
that was sort of like that took all the fun out. I'm like, yeah,
Yeah.
that's not. I tell the story because I want to tell a particular story.
Yeah, and I know, like, just looking, flipping it around from the other side, let's say that we were the people with the core idea. It's going to be our money and resources behind
Hmm.
producing this work, and we're looking for somebody to complement us, right? Um,
Yeah.
I know both from doing musical collaborations and having bands and from leading software projects that um, if the other person's not invested, like you have to understand what somebody's why is and why what they're going to
They can
get
be
out of it.
invested, but in a different way.
But not in a way like where you're selling them on, hey, this is going to be a good thing for you. It's going to be like, no, this is doing something for somebody that they find fulfilling or novel, that they're going to get joy out of. Otherwise, you're not going to get their best work, and they're not necessarily going to be reliable, and they could bow out. It just really
Yeah.
increases the risk.
And that has happened with all the other
Yeah,
projects that I mentioned. Yeah,
yeah,
because they were not, I think at least they were not in it for my reasons.
yeah. They're not Yeah, and
Yeah.
so there's like these different phases of exploring what a project's going to be, right? There's like number one, getting to know each other as people, and then there's like this kick ideas around phase. And I think maybe how I would approach it moving forward is that's like the songwriting, co-writing thing where you have an appointment, maybe 3 hour block of time, and you explore a concept and you throw ideas around. At the end of that time, maybe you have a project concept or you don't. And then after that, you can sleep on it, get back together, and like if the ideas are still coming, there's still passion from both sides to make it better and want to move it forward, then maybe you have a project and you can discuss expectations, roles,
Yeah.
responsibilities, contractual kind of stuff, right?
I was just thinking about that, like the expectations are um,
Yeah.
so important. Yeah.
Yeah, and like who's gonna own this for the long term, right? Like all these things that you can or don't have to think of, right? It's either a short-term project where you're not really creating an asset, and that's okay, or you put the effort in to think about those things. I'm not great at that. So I love when people put out templates and contracts and
Yeah,
things
I
for
hate
that.
contracts. I don't understand. I don't speak the language either. But I do know that if you make something and
Hmm.
you put it out there and you die,
Yeah.
like somebody is gonna have 70 years, isn't it? So it's 70 years.
Yeah.
So it's good to have in writing
Yeah. In a
what
co
belongs to whom,
in a
when.
co-write that
Yeah.
gets really tricky, I imagine, and there's good resources for that. I don't claim to have them, and I need to figure that out. Like honestly, for stuff I'm
No,
working on.
every time
Yeah.
I make a contract, I just look at the previous ones that I have.
Mm-hmm.
I just try to make it up as I go.
Yeah.
Uh, but even you do have something, and it's not, it's even if this is your best friend you're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, because, and I admit, me and my co-writer, we don't have a contract yet, and I've been trying to get that done.
Yeah.
And it's not that I don't trust her or her partner.
Mm-hmm.
That's not, but you don't know what happens when something
Yeah.
happens.
Well, and
And it's such a timeline.
I think
70
what
years.
most likely to happen in a lot of these cases is nobody's going to be exploiting it or benefiting from it because of the uncertainty. So, like, if something happens
Yeah.
to me, right, or something happens to my co-writer, um, probably it's going to stop selling it, right, and nobody's going to
Yeah.
make money. But there are opportunities to set it up where people can benefit for the long term. Um, and that's a lot of advanced stuff to think about, right, beyond the fun of it. And
Yeah.
I think that's where
Well,
it's
I think a lot of people only want to think about contracts
mm-hmm,
when they envision, um, they first want to see if it's going to be successful and then they'll think about a contract. But I'm like, it's so much easier to draw up a contract when you both think nothing is at stake. As soon as you see that something's at
mm-hmm.
stake, you'll have a different relationship to the contract you're building.
Right. And some people
Yeah.
will approach it from, I'm going to own this in the long term, but you're going to get a certain value up to X dollars or for X amount of time, but I'm the
Yeah, I've had
publisher,
discussions like that.
right?
Yeah.
And that's okay. But if you don't define that, then it's just
You have,
ambiguous.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you don't have to do the same for every project.
No, no. But it's
No.
all, it's a question of how much work do you want to put on yourself or others. And
Yeah. Yeah.
I that's not the part that gets me excited, but it is a part I know we'll have to figure out, And
Yeah, like it's important. Like I've hit my head quite a few times over that one.
yeah, and so
Uh,
how we're dealing with it in terms of, we have something in writing, but more what it is we're setting aside 20% for the publishing side of expenses as far as
oh,
revenues
that's good.
go.
Yeah.
And so that money like has kind of a prioritized list of what we spend it on, whether it's improving covers or editing or filing copyrights, the expenses of filing copyrights, that kind of thing, setting it up for a long term. So the way I'm thinking about it is, well, if it hits this minimum level of viability, then we treat it as a sustainable asset where we can set it up for the
Yeah.
long term. And, whether or not there's like a holding company kind of thing or a state that kind of, manages
Yeah. Mm.
that other people can be
Makes sense.
shareholders in and manage. If there's sufficient money out of that 20% to set that up legally, then we'll get there.
Yeah.
Other,
That's a good
otherwise,
one.
otherwise, invest that time and energy elsewhere with stuff that is selling. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think it's a good one. But it's so like this. That's for me. What the thing I learned is that it doesn't matter how good you think your friendships are or
Mm,
how good you level with one person.
mm,
Things do happen,
yeah.
and it's just something you don't have to talk about anymore once you put
Yeah.
it in writing, unless, of course, the business changes and you
Yeah.
want to make some amendments.
And there could
So yeah,
be
it's not the fun part,
no, and
for
there could
sure.
there could be this other thing, right? So we've got this minimum commitment to do a trilogy. So let's say we're
Yes.
done,
Yeah.
and I have two other projects waiting now, and I need to go do those. And she wants to keep writing in the universe. So what do we do then? Does it continue to be 50-50? Is that a fair thing? So we have a provision set up. So if just one person's writing in that world moving forward, how that looks in terms of splits and that kind of thing
Yeah.
and expectations, right? So that's another piece we thought about. Um,
And that's good advice as well, because you don't know what's going to happen in the long run.
yeah, and we do have to set ourselves up to, you've got to diversify. We're talking about being professionals. Do have to diversify, right? The portfolio, it can't just be one asset. And moving forward, my balance is, so I've got this co-write, I've got another co-write to work on, and I know that I've got these other things that maybe I want to take to Trad Pub. And to do that, I want to make sure it's a solo thing. So I have to find the time to
Yeah.
create that as well.
And time is limited.
And time is limited. So that means I can't just write on the co-write stuff. So there's
No, you have
some
to find, yeah.
internal balance, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking at that internal balance for the moment. Like my big project is a project I started writing when I was 14.
Mm.
So
It's like
that's almost,
the life work here.
yes, yeah, that's gonna be my and I've been pushed in the past to just publish it and get it
Mm.
over with.
Mm-hmm.
Like, no, this is the legacy.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't care how long it's gonna take. But I've also realized that I've been recently, like, all my like there's so many books I want to write.
Yeah.
Non-fiction, fiction. So the co-writing projects, I understand that at this point they're the ones that bring in the money. So they need a particular amount of time per week. I have
Mm-hmm.
to put in certain hours. But I've also realized that not working on my big project at all, because that's something I used to do it in chunks.
Mm-hmm.
Like I took like 3 months and then rewrote the next draft, and then, but I can't do that because we are on a production schedule
Mm-hmm.
for the co-write, so we have to keep going.
Yeah.
So I can't just disappear for 3 months with my big, YA fantasy book and just I can't do it.
Yeah.
So I've been now trying to find a balance that, okay, I need so many hours on the fiction, on the romance, because we're producing that now, so we're
Mm-hmm.
setting that up. So we need to work on that brand. Then there's the nonfiction I want to write, and then there's my fantasy I want to write. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm right now, I don't have the balance yet, but I'm trying to find a way. How can I like do all of
Mm-hmm.
that in one week? instead of going, I'll do this
Mm,
first, and then that week I'll do that. And I'm like, I need to find space for that because that's also something that fulfills me,
yeah,
and it is something that needs to be done. And there's only
yeah,
so much time you can actually sit down and write.
yeah.
So how do you balance
Well,
those
that's
projects?
interesting, I guess. And I'm thinking about if this were me, like, and I get 2 to 3 windows, production windows a day of time. And the first one's like mandatory core, whatever my most important thing is. And
Hmm.
so it's kind of prioritized that way. And then there's a second window, right, where I can work on something else that's also important. And then the third one's as time permits, right? If I get there and other life things don't come up. And I rarely get there, honestly. Um, so just thinking in terms of me, but I imagine having expectations around there for yourself and how much stress you're putting on about that, what has to happen versus what's nice to happen, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
That's
Like I have that as well. Like this needs to happen,
yeah.
and this is just a bonus.
I think the problem, like the risk area, like at least that I've run into and had other people I've collaborated with have an issue with, is when there's more than one must do going on at the same time.
Yeah, yeah.
Because then that means that maybe nothing's going to get done, right?
Well, nothing's gonna then be done well.
Or something's gonna fall through. Somebody's gonna be disappointed. There's gonna be an
Yeah,
obligation that turns
yeah,
into a stressor and creates anxiety. And yeah,
yeah. And that for me is like when you've committed to a co-writing project, the thing
mm.
is that that is for me at least that's the place you cannot disappoint.
Yeah, that's number one.
Like
Yeah,
like
you're impacting somebody else's
my other
schedule.
deadlines,
Yeah.
yeah, my other deadlines, like they mean I try to be quite strict about deadlines because otherwise I don't put the work out.
Hmm.
But my own deadlines, they're flexible.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if you work with another person,
And
you can't, yeah,
that's one
you
of
have to
those. That's like one of those co-writing dating things you have to figure out early on is where the values are there too. Like, so for me,
yeah,
if I make a commitment to somebody, I'm like, that's number one. And not everybody has that. Like, it could be somebody's like, no, I've got this business that's doing really great. And this collaboration with you is a nice to have, but it's not what's making
yeah.
my money, right? That's important to know, right?
So that's the why and the expectations.
Yeah.
Why are you in this, and
And
what are
you,
your expectations
and
of
so if
it?
that's going to move forward, then like, I have to be comfortable that, well, I'll meet my obligations, but I have to be okay with that this project may not hit its deadlines and goals. And so then I have to examine why am I doing it and be okay with whatever happens, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's also that's the allowing for a certain kind of fluidity and flexibility in
Mm-hmm.
projects like that because
Yeah.
there are two people involved or more people involved, and at the end of the day we're all human.
Yeah.
So things sometimes it's bad time management on one, but sometimes it's just life gets in the way.
Yeah. And
Um,
it's, and it's kind of outer, once commit to a project that's going on, there's a certain percent that's a lot of it's out of your control at that point. So,
yeah,
and that becomes a personal skill. Like, where am I at in terms of my own comfort level with things that are outside of my control and outcomes versus kind of the
hmm,
process of doing it, the joy. And so, as long as for me, the joy and the fun and the other things are working, then I'm okay, right? But if
yeah,
it's just not fun anymore, then there's probably got to be a way to think about how do I have out clauses in this? What point do you kind of press pause or cancel and shelf
yeah,
table the project too? Uh, yeah,
yeah. Especially when you put your own project on the back burner because of this commitment.
yeah. And
That's all about the balance.
I've got this second collaboration going on, and it's kind of waiting for me to free up from the current co-write. And that's okay because the other person doesn't really have any publishing goals. And so they're okay with that. But
Yeah, they just wanna, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, but that wouldn't work for everybody for sure.
No, that I have that with the imposter syndrome book. It's very much. I'm a very structured person. Like I said, like I'm a plotter.
Hmm.
My co-writer is much more of when inspiration hits, he
Hmm.
goes, and then he can produce like a crazy amount of words.
Hmm.
Um, so we've been trying to find a balance there because I mean I sometimes need to let go of the structure to make the magic happen.
Hmm.
So for now, what we've decided is I know which topics I want to bring in, like what I know now that I want to bring in, and then I want to see what comes up as we write it.
Hmm.
So what we did now is I created like a sort of writing prompts,
Hmm.
and he's just gonna so questions for him, like what kind of like journaling
Oh,
questions.
that's
So
cool.
he's just gonna tackle them one by one
Yeah.
when he's ready.
Mm.
So it's very much instead of "Well, we need this book out then, we keep each other up to date. And okay, so that's my window there, and then I'm gonna sit with it, and then I'm gonna pour out everything I can now,
Hmm.
and then it's back to you, and you'll let me know when you can look at it. So we
Yeah.
try to do a fluid approach instead of and I don't, this is the first time I'm trying that, just to
Yeah.
see
That
see
feels that feels nice, right? Like,
yeah,
and
it's
it's just
interesting because I'm
yeah.
so used to doing a very I mean, I used to be a teacher, so I'm very used to,
Hmm.
you have a deadline, you have a syllabus, this is done
Hmm.
then, this is done then, this is done then. Of course, like I think I've been more flexible than my colleagues
Yeah.
when students came to me and were like, I know I need to write this paper, but I just don't know, like that, it's not coming to me.
Mm.
Like I wasn't one of those teachers who needed like, some written thing by a doctor that you couldn't do the work. If
Mm.
your reason was I can't grasp it yet, I'll take 2 more days.
Yeah.
So I would like so inspiration needs to hit, but yeah, I am quite structured. But this feels like when he first suggested that, I was like, what?
Mm.
But it's been very nice, but also it takes the pressure off of me
Hmm.
that I can just, look at this when my inspiration hits. And that's great because I can do 10 things in one day.
Yeah.
Depends on my mood. And I just go like my best days are when I work on everything for like an hour.
Yeah.
And I just go to the next one and then I put out so much work. And with this project I can do that as well. And it's not something that I have to do. I don't know if it's still gonna work as now we're in the exploratory phase. So now
Mm.
I think that's good. I think once we get to the revising and like the actual structuring, we need more structure
Yeah.
as well. But for now it works really well.
That's fun. Yeah.
Hey, what I
That's
want to know,
yeah.
yeah.
Go ahead. No.
No, I was
No.
gonna say
Stand.
because you were talking about trial and error. So you gave the example of, the example you gave to me sounded very much like, and this is also what I see with my own co-writing,
Mm.
is I work with these two people because they have different strengths than I have.
Hmm.
Like with the nonfiction co-write, I started very structured. Then my co-writer was like, I think we need a more fluid approach at the beginning because otherwise we're not gonna dig deep and find
Mm.
out what we want to say.
Mm. Mm.
And for me, there was like, you're right, because I'm already thinking about what do people want to hear and how can I best, like a very academic way of going. Like, okay, so
Hmm.
where are my arguments? Where are my counter arguments?
Hmm.
And he was like, yeah, maybe. And I was like, oh, you're so right. Like
Yeah.
like my nonfiction is so structured. Um, so that is his strength. My
Hmm.
strength will be once we get all that information to
Put it
structure
together.
it.
Yeah.
But that's not now. With my other co-writer, it's she's a great first drafter. I'm a great plotter. I'm a great reviser. So you were talking about, wanting to write a song together and then produce it, and then you realize we might be two now, but it doesn't make a complete team
Hmm. Yeah.
because you both have the same strengths. So that was an example where you're like, oh yeah, this is not gonna work. Do you have an example when you were like everything came together? Like
Yeah.
one of the best collaborations you've ever done, and why was that?
Well, Yeah, you've got a beautiful example. It was more of an ensemble effort. So I recorded a couple albums in Hawaii on the Big Island, and have some friends that.
Sounds like such, that's just sounds like the hard life.
Yeah, I know it was rough. Um, so the first time I went out there, I brought my own songs mostly, and there were a couple
Hmm.
co-writes with people who were there, that we kind of did ahead of time, but it was mostly my own stuff, and so it was my project. And the second time I went, we built in a week for us to hang out, myself and two others, and just hang out for a week, living together. I was visiting their space, and they have a little studio. We're able to hang out and be relaxed and do activities, drink wine and have food, and just use that time to explore and write songs. And then without the pressure of how many are we going to produce and create. And then
Hmm.
there was a week set aside for after that to go into the studio and capture whatever we have. And and that was really, we had a spread of skill sets and values in terms of what was important in a song, what we each cared about. And so there was this nice bit where we all had things to contribute, but then there were areas where we could push each other. And
Hmm.
and I don't know about you, but I know when I'm being pushed and I'm on that edge of feeling uncomfortable.
Hmm.
But that point, the nice balance part is we all know that getting the first draft is an act of surrender. It's like you just come up with stuff, you're not shutting each other down. And when you've got something and you've got the idea and you've focused it down, and we know each person cares about a different song or different elements, then we can go, hey, let's apply our tools, our craft tools to this. And how can we make this better? Because we still have 2 days left, 1 day left, or 3 days left until we go into the studio. And we're still chiseling away right up until
Hmm. Yeah.
the end there. And it was nice because we have that trust, we have those relationships already built up, and different skill sets and parts where we felt passionate about to kind of pull it together, the different parts of it. And it worked really well. So um, the producer was a little nervous, right? Because I'm coming in, I'm saying, hey, I'm going to come in, we're going to write this thing from scratch. I don't know what we're doing. I don't know how many songs we're doing. Hey, we're going to book this drummer. Don't know, who else we're going to need, but we're going to do this thing. And it was really organic and
You're
cool. And
completely in the flow.
yeah, it was completely in the flow. But I did, I have a note, and I think it's an important thing to track on these type of things. Um, Once you have a concept, and this, whether this is in writing songs or in a book, chances are there's going to be somebody who gets the big picture for this thing more than the others, or has an idea of how we're going to exploit this or what we can
Yeah,
specifically
yeah.
do with this. Somebody, and these things don't work unless there is somebody who this project is for, like a focal point. Whether it's going to be for this publisher, it's going to go to this genre, and this person already has a name established, right? Or this is going to be the person who's the performing artist for this thing we're doing. Somebody
Yeah,
has
yeah,
to be the veto authority, and it has to be the one who's pulling together the big and saying, hey, we've got enough here, we need to focus here. Somebody to kind of pull it together, and everybody else be willing to, you know, give ideas to, but also be willing to step down. And I know that I've been a part of projects where um, I really appreciate that people are willing to let me drive it in that way and be the decider of good enough, and to know that there are aspects of the work that some people aren't happy with everything about it, but that the only reason we're able to pull it together with the time and resources we have is that we knew when to improve things and when to let the process move forward. Um,
Yeah.
and
Mm.
vice versa, for me to plug in and to be in a support role and to know when, hey, it's this other person's point of view or their personal taste is going to dictate the final decisions, and I'm okay with that. you know but I can use my craft and my tools to help them succeed.
Yeah. I think
Yeah.
that's important to know for each, because I tend to be the big I tend to be the bigger picture person.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't always that needs that needs quite a bit of communication. Like I said, with the imposter syndrome book, um, I think because I see the bigger picture before I start.
Mm.
I start out very, okay, so what are we going to do? How are we going to tackle this? So I go go in like, okay, so
Mm-hmm.
how are we going to do this? It was actually really fun is that when he addressed that, okay, so this is really your strength. Like you can organize this, you can structure this. I first want to try this approach. And
Mm.
basically because he was so honest in that, when I was, you were talking about comfort zone.
Mm-hmm.
That was so out of my comfort zone.
Mm.
But at the same time, once I read through his comments, like we just work together in one document right now. We use different colors and we
Mm-hmm.
just type to each other basically. It's very messy. Um, but it sort of gave me the permission to like put my filter down.
Mm-hmm.
And like I took one deep breath and I just started writing. And I was like, oh, so this now it's coming from a different place. It's no longer
Yeah.
coming from here, it's coming from
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
Because he gave me the permission, but also because I realized, okay, so I can drive this project, but not now.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
Right now, yeah. So it's like what you said, like if you we can almost say see like we are now in the first 4 days of the 7 weeks of trying to figure it out, and it's not time yet to go, like, okay, we're almost going to start writing this.
Mm-hmm.
So, now let's see what we have and let's cut away what we don't need.
Yeah.
But at the same time, with this Sunday, so upcoming Sunday, the second book in our first trilogy is going to get published.
Mm.
And it was the most difficult, for some reason, it was maybe because it's the middle book. It was very difficult to write.
Mm.
And I've changed quite a few bits, even in the last phase. And my co-writer, who's not as much of a fan of the editing process as I am, was like,
Mm-hmm.
it's fine. Look at what the beta readers say. It's fine. You don't have to change that much. But I
Mm.
felt like, no, 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 no. I can do this. Like I can like pull this together.
Mm-hmm.
And she was already done. Like she was done with it. She was like, can we move on to book 3?
Yeah.
Could you let it go? But for me, and I'm no longer a perfectionist. I used to be,
Mm-hmm.
but like I'm very much good enough is good enough. One of the reasons I wanted to write the romance is because good enough is good enough.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I knew, I was so certain that it was not about being a perfectionist. It was because I saw there were some threads that were not connected properly,
Mm-hmm.
and I just needed another shot at fixing it, and I did.
Yeah.
And so the comments we now get, so it's now with our ARC team,
Mm.
the comments we get now, and some of our ARC team members are also beta readers, and their comments are, I don't know how you did it, but
Mm.
it's finally one thing. And I'm like, so this is why at the end I decided, because at one point I just said like, okay, if this needs a complete rewrite, it will get a rewrite. I don't care that we want to have it pub. So I was at that point kind of
Mm-hmm.
stepping up and going like, no, 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 like this is
Yeah.
how we're gonna do it.
Right. Because so it sounds like it
Yeah,
was your vision. You kind of had that role
yeah,
and
yeah,
kind of a
and also because I think,
QA
yeah.
part of it, right? Like when is it good enough? And that is.
Yes, and my why is I want to leave a legacy that I'm proud of.
Mm.
And there were too many badly written books out there already. Like I
Mm.
didn't want because I didn't feel it was good enough. Now I feel like it's romance. It's not perfect,
Yeah.
but at least the
Yeah.
story is now. So it was not, and that's the thing. It's like I think my co-writer thought it was about me being a perfectionist. I'm like, no, no, no. I can do this. I just need
Yeah.
I just need more time.
I think that's
And
where
I
like
still made it. Yeah.
there's this concept of trust versus control, right? And
Yeah.
all of us as humans are somewhere on the spectrum of um, based on life experiences and how things go, right? Like as a collaborator with you, like, okay, I'm not sure what you're seeing there and how you think you're going to improve this, right? But I
Yeah.
can respond to the situation in terms of, no, we're on a schedule. We need to do this, you know, and what matters is that we do this because I'm going to feel safe and better if we stick to the plan versus
Yeah.
I don't have the same experiences and tools as you do. And maybe there's something I just need to let go and let you have your shot at it and let you
Yeah.
move forward with it and be okay with schedules changing or whatever it is. Um,
Yeah, and for me in this case, so this was me for the first time actually stepping up and saying, I've got this, I'm gonna
mm,
do it anyway.
yeah.
And also, of course, beautifully, the book was done 3 days before the deadline.
Mm. Well
So
done.
that was, yeah, and but for me, it was like, it's, because this is the thing, I know when I'm perfectionist, I'm here. But this was my gut call, like, no, 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 you're not there yet. You can do
Yeah.
it. And I could do it. But that's like the thing, like you said, it's we were on a schedule. We need to work on the next book.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm very much of the belief that if the second book doesn't work, nobody's gonna read the next one.
Mm. Yeah,
So, and
that's
if I
true.
didn't know how to fix it, I would have let it go. But I knew how to fix it. Yeah,
And that's a good thing. Like,
yeah,
and there is a challenge there when there is a schedule and there are deadlines,
yeah,
right? And that's something to think about when we create create our schedules, right?
yeah,
Yeah. Um,
yeah,
like when I talked about that, how this product, music product, it came together with the collaboration, um, because we weren't attached to the number of songs, but there was a timeline. Like
yeah,
once we're done, we have this much time in the studio. Like we can improve it for so long, but then it's got to be good enough. So whatever we're veering towards and steering toward, it's gotta finish. Otherwise, whatever is left as an open thread is just not going to be on the final album. It's not going to be there. It's going to be abandoned.
And do you think that helps? Because some people thrive with strict deadlines, and some people are completely paralyzed by them.
I think it helps. Yeah. Um, but uh,
Does it only help if you can let it go? Like if you work with the good enough?
yeah, there was a tension. Like I'll be honest. Like um, I thought it was good enough, but I was also in the driver's seat, and it was my project. But I had at least one collaborator who was like, "No, I'd really like to try to make this better." But they weren't in the driver's seat, and they could, if they wanted to, take a shot at it, right? But at the end of the day,
Hmm.
you step away from it for a while and come back, and it's like, this is pretty good. You know, I'm
Mm.
actually okay. And ironically, so there's one song we ended up doing six, and one of them we really struggled with in terms of feeling happy with it and putting a lot of time into more of that post production side of things and searching, and it's like it's not really how we envisioned it. And
Oh yeah, yeah. Hmm.
of the songs that were on there, that's the one that got the music library placement actually.
That's
And
it's yeah, it's so
that
funny.
other people were,
Yeah,
able to use and exploit the most. And so,
that's so funny. You never know. And this is one of the things is that why I think it's so important to make the things that you want to make
hmm,
for the right reasons.
yeah,
Because whether or not it's going to be a moneymaker, whether people are going to want to read it,
mm,
it's not really up to you. Like there's just no predicting that.
yeah, yeah. And that's
Yeah.
why it's interesting in your story about your collaboration there. The beta readers were okay with the book that you had, even though
Well,
you
they
could
saw they they
see.
they 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 did see our struggle,
Mm-hmm.
but they were like, it's not bad enough for me
Mm.
not to move on to the next book.
Mm.
So they did see, so they were like, it's not as smooth as the first book, but it's
Mm-hmm.
okay.
Mm.
But my goal was never to make it as smooth. I think that's the difference. Like, my goal was never to make it as smooth as the first book.
Mm-hmm.
I just had a feeling about the second book that I just what was actually going on with the main character was just hiding under the surface, and I just
Mm-hmm.
didn't, and I only got it. When did I get it? About 2 weeks ago.
Yeah. Well,
And actually, it was while we were plotting. We did we did a lot of. We went to we went together to the 20 Books conference. Then we went 6 days to the Highlands
mm,
to write. So it was
nice.
actually while we were plotting the second trilogy that I sort of realized, and this was wrong with that second book. So this is how we're
Mm,
gonna do it. So yeah, I was like, I just need just trust that I can do it in time and that I can fix it. And
that's cool.
which I did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. These things come up like I'm sure I could come up with 50 examples of like when there was that tension of like, hey, it's
Yeah.
good enough. Like of the two of us were like, it's good enough, or I'm comfortable with where this is going. I can't see where this is going. Right? One person's in one camp and one's in the other. And those are, the interesting times to ride with, the discomfort and still moving forward.
Yeah, and not like shutting, like not, and I think I could have done that better this time because at one point I did feel like I was shutting out my co-writer
Mm,
because she said something about as long as like we don't have time for a complete rewrite.
mm-hmm,
And I went, if it needs a complete rewrite, it's gonna get a complete rewrite. Like I went
mm-hmm,
very,
mm-hmm.
uh,
Control, yeah.
and I could have handled that with much more grace. Like I will absolutely admit that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I think part of it is that I also didn't trust that I could do it in the time that I was given.
Mm,
So I think that was my defense came from my own trust, and maybe also thinking that that sort of translated into her not trusting that I could pull it off.
yeah,
Yeah, and it didn't need it. It needed tweaking.
yeah.
Um, and I did. I think, I mean, let's see, like it publishes Sunday, so let's see what the readers think.
Yeah.
But the art members seem, like I said, like this is the thing, it's like one of our biggest fans, it was like, it's fine. But when she read the art version,
Mm-hmm,
she no longer said it was fine. She was
mm-hmm.
like, I don't know how the fuck you just did that. I don't know what you did. I cannot figure out how you did it. So I'm like, this is exactly the kind of response. Like, I don't
Yeah,
want a book that's fine. I want people to go like, yes, thank you, this works.
yeah,
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 because that's all about my why. Like, I want to write something I'm proud of.
yeah. And we can be proud for different reasons. I think
Yes.
each
So
of
this
us are
is,
going to have different
um,
needs from what we've created. Yeah.
yeah. So that's why you said, like you said before, like it's so important to know each other's whys. Why are you in this?
Mm-hmm,
Are those expectations aligned with each other? Like,
mm-hmm.
does that make? And I think having that conversation quite early on, and then
Yeah,
being honest about whether you think that's a red flag or whether like
yeah.
can we actually do this together? I think that's gonna make it so much more worthwhile.
I think it's the nice thing about what you're doing with the nonfiction book collaboration is, in a way, you may not know early on what it's going to be, and even how attached you are to the project, and the other person may not either. And so having that time to explore and decide, um, do we have something here that we're both into? It can evolve over time. It can move from, I don't know, it's a good idea, to like, we've got to do this, right? Get to that certain
Yeah,
point
and,
of
and but
investment.
but
Yeah.
the same happened in your project, right? Like you did. That's what, like my point is
Yeah.
that so many people want to collaborate because they think um, it'll fasten their it just speeds up their publishing. But you also took 9 months
Yeah, and I don't think,
because of schedules not lining up.
yeah, and I don't
You
think we
had to
would have
take
been.
those 9 months.
I don't think we would have been as attached to it if we hadn't taken that time and had the organic stuff come up.
Yeah.
You know, went from being an intellectual exercise to something we were both invested in because we put a lot of time, and these characters were becoming real to us. And, you know, we're attached.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, I think that's the whole time limit.
Can,
That
it
is.
can be a forcing function. It can kill a project probably from ever happening.
And
But
I'm not sure it's the right reasons to do these collaborations.
yeah, I'm pretty soft on what's right or wrong because whoever's driving the
Yeah.
project, they have their reasons and they're doing it. It's working for them, I
And if you
assume.
find the right people, yeah,
Yeah,
if this is a thing, if you find somebody who has the exact same expectation, the exact same why,
yeah,
then that's probably gonna work, yeah.
yeah. That's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the main thing I just ask people to take away is why are you entering into a project? Why are you considering a co-write or a collaboration? What are your needs? You know, and like just because 10 other people are collaborating, co-writing for a specific reason doesn't mean it has to be your reason, right? It's a personal thing, and I think between the advantages and disadvantages of any individual collaboration, it's kind of a wash. And I'm more of the school of there's 1,000 right ways to do something. Some of them are more right than others, but you know, there's no.
Yeah, and some are more right for you than others. What may
Yeah,
be wrong for you can be completely valid for somebody else.
maybe you didn't have any other options at the time anyway, so you're just learning and getting better and practicing your craft and practicing collaboration and investing in your future.
I think that's a very good way, or
Yeah.
very nice sentiment to end this interview. Thank you so much for sharing all this.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure.
Uh, and also, it's not, sometimes these are really interviews and sometimes these are actual conversations. This was an
Hmm.
actual conversation, which I very much appreciate.
Yeah, likewise.
Um, Thank you so much. Like I said, do when we'll do this later, send me all your links. I will
Hmm.
put all of them in the, I call them show notes, but
Great.
so I'll make sure they're in here. I'll make sure they're on YouTube so people can find you.
Great.
Thank
Yeah.
you so much. Have a
Hey,
really good day,
you too. Have a good
and
night.
it's not yet, but well, I'm gonna go soon.
Might be a
It's been a
glass of
long,
wine
long.
in there.
Yeah, it's been a long, long day.
Mm.
We'll talk to each other soon,
Yeah.
I'm sure.
Okay.
Thanks for doing this.
Great. Be well.
You too.